The air was sharp and brisk, the sky a heavy gray canvas stretched over the suburban landscape. Fresh snow lay like a pristine blanket, muffling sound and transforming the neighborhood into an eerie stillness. Darius Williams tugged his gloves tighter, adjusted his beanie against the biting chill, and plunged his snow shovel into the thick white expanse covering his driveway. It wasn't his favorite task, but with another storm looming later that night, he knew staying ahead of it was non-negotiable. Across the street, Karen Whitman, a retired school administrator with a reputation for precision, peeked through her lace curtains. Her lips pressed together in disapproval, as they often did whenever she thought about Darius. Since he'd moved in a year ago, she'd made no secret of her disdain, convinced he didn't belong in their quiet, orderly community. While other neighbors greeted him warmly, exchanging nods and casual pleasantries, Karen's interactions were laced with thinly veiled suspicion, or absent altogether. Today, however, Karen decided to confront him directly. Stepping on her porch, arms crossed defensively, she called out sharply, "Excuse me, what exactly are you doing?" Darius paused mid-shovel, barely suppressing a sigh. He gestured toward the house behind him, the one he had called home for over a year. "Shoveling my driveway," he said evenly. Karen's eyes narrowed, skepticism etched across her face. "I don't think so," she muttered under her breath before retreating inside. Moments later, Darius caught the faint flutter of her blinds as she resumed, watching him from behind the curtain. Then came the wail of police sirens slicing through the morning calm. A squad car rolled up, its tires crunching over the icy road. 2 officers emerged, hands hovering near their holsters. For Darius, this scene felt all too familiar. A black man standing where someone thought he shouldn't be. And now, here he was again, at the center of it. Sergeant Mitchell approached first, his expression hardened by years of duty. "Sir, we received a call about a suspicious individual in the area. Mind telling us what you're doing here?" Darius forced himself to remain calm, though every fiber of his being bristled at the implication. "I live here. I'm clearing my driveway. Do you have proof of residency?" Mitchell pressed. Darius exhaled slowly, pulling out his house keys and pointing to his front door. "Yeah, that's my house. What exactly did she tell you?" Officer Hayes glanced toward Karen, who had reappeared on her porch, feigning distress. "He was looking around like he was trying to break in," she said, her voice trembling theatrically. I didn't know what he was planning to do." Darius's jaw tightened, but he stayed silent. This wasn't about safety, it was about control. Again, he held up his keys. "I already told you. I live here. I'm shoveling my own driveway." Mitchell remained unmoved. "We'll still need to see some ID." Darius knew his rights, but he also understood how quickly things could escalate. Slowly, deliberately, he pulled out his wallet and handed over his driver's license. As Mitchell studied it, Karen interjected, her tone dripping with accusation. "I don't think that's real. You should check if it's fake." Darius let out a sharp breath, incredulity flashing across his face. "You serious right now?" He turned to Officer Hayes, whose hesitation betrayed a flicker of doubt in his eyes. Just then, a voice rang out from next door. Mrs. Patel, an elderly woman who had lived in the neighborhood for decades, stepped onto her porch. "That's Darius," she called out, glaring at Karen. "He's my neighbor. He helped me bring in my groceries last week. Why are you harassing him?" Hayes and Mitchell exchanged uneasy glances. Karen faltered briefly but quickly recovered, folding her arms defiantly. "I was just being cautious. You can't be too careful these days." "Cautious?" Mrs. Patel scoffed. "You see him outside every day. You just don't like that he lives here." For the first time, the officers seemed unsure. Hayes cleared his throat. "Ma'am, did you actually see him do anything illegal?" Karen hesitated, then crossed her arms again. "He was just acting suspicious." Mitchell exhaled sharply and turned back to Darius. "Sorry for the trouble, sir. We're going to wrap this up." He handed back Darius's ID, but the weight of the encounter lingered. As the squad car drove away, Darius stood there, gripping his shovel. He had seen the look in Karen's eyes, the smug confidence that she could weaponize fear and suspicion against him. Something deep down told him this wasn't her first time making baseless accusations. But today, thanks to Mrs. Patel's intervention, the truth had prevailed. Still, the question lingered. How many more times would he have to prove his existence to people who refused to see him as part of the fabric of his own community? As the officers turned to leave, Darius made a decision that would change everything. He was determined to uncover the truth about Karen Whitman, every secret she thought she had buried. And when he did, she would regret ever dialing 911. Sitting at his kitchen table with his laptop glowing in front of him, the memory of their encounter replayed in his mind like a broken record. The way she called the police so casually, assuming they'd believe her without question, not at him. But as he reflected, one thing became clear. This wasn't just an impulsive act on Karen's part. It was calculated. She acted because she believed she could get away with it. And Darius wasn't about to let that slide. He began his investigation where most people don't think to look: public records. With access to online legal databases and enough determination, Darius knew there were skeletons hiding behind polished facades. Starting with her full name, Karen Whitman, he combed through court filings, property deeds, and archive documents. At first, nothing unusual surfaced. A few property transfers, some mundane community board minutes. But then, something caught his eye. An old police report from nearly 15 years ago revealed a dark chapter in Karen's past. She had been arrested for check fraud after attempting to cash forged checks at a local bank. Worse still, she had stolen someone else's identity to pull off the scheme. Darius scrolled through the case details, his jaw tightening. Karen had pleaded guilty to a lesser charge, avoiding jail time by paying a hefty fine. So much for her self-righteous image, he thought bitterly. But the revelations didn't stop there. Digging deeper, Darius uncovered a civil lawsuit filed against Karen shortly after her fraud conviction. A black woman named Monica Harris had sued her for refusing to make necessary repairs, imposing unjustified late fees, and using racial slurs in emails. Monica won the case, and Karen was ordered to pay damages. Darius leaned back in his chair, exhaling sharply. It all made sense now. This wasn't random or isolated behavior. Karen had a pattern of targeting black individuals, and this time, she had picked the wrong person. With meticulous precision, Darius compiled every piece of evidence: the fraud charges, the discrimination lawsuit, the damning emails, and saved them securely. Anger simmered within him, but he knew lashing out wouldn't bring justice. Instead, he devised a plan far more effective. Social media became his platform. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Reddit, he posted everywhere people might see. His message was simple yet powerful. Meet Karen Whitman. She called the cops on me for shoveling my own driveway. But here's what you should know about her. She has a criminal record for fraud and was sued for racial discrimination. She tried to ruin my life, but here's the truth about hers. Attached were screenshots of the police report, lawsuit details, and archived emails. Within an hour, the post went viral. Hundreds of shares turned into thousands overnight. Comment sections exploded with outrage. So typical, one user wrote, "Calls the cops on a black man for no reason, but turns out she's the real criminal." Another chimed in, "This is why nobody takes Karen seriously anymore." Karma came fast. Local news outlets soon picked up the story. Independent journalists reached out to Darius for interviews, amplifying the narrative across multiple platforms. Karen's face was plastered everywhere, on television screens, social feeds, and headlines. Her carefully curated persona as an upstanding citizen crumbled under the weight of her exposed crimes. The fallout was swift and merciless. Her employer terminated her contract, unwilling to associate with someone tainted by discrimination and fraud scandals. The Homeowners Association held an emergency meeting, publicly calling for her removal from the neighborhood board. Even Karen's friends and family distanced themselves, embarrassed to be linked to her toxic legacy. In a desperate bid for redemption, Karen posted a feeble apology online. "I was just being cautious." But the damage was done. Her attempts at damage control only fueled further ridicule. In the end, Karen Whitman learned the hard way that actions have consequences. For Darius, it wasn't just about revenge. It was about exposing the truth and holding someone accountable who thought she was untouchable. Justice, he realized, wasn't always served in courtrooms. Sometimes it was delivered by the collective voice of a community demanding accountability. I never intended for anyone to feel unsafe. I'm truly sorry if my actions were misunderstood, but by the time I realized, it was already too late. No one believed me. A week after the video went viral, Karen was seen leaving her house with suitcases in hand, her face concealed beneath a scarf. Her fall from grace had been swift, and many would argue, well-deserved. Darius didn't feel an ounce of pity for her. She had tried to destroy his life with nothing more than a phone call. Instead, he simply smiled as he shoveled snow that day, uninterrupted this time. The fallout from the viral post was merciless and immediate. Karen Whitman had always been known around the neighborhood as outspoken. Some called her traditional, while others whispered behind closed doors about something darker: racism. But now, no one was whispering anymore. By the end of the week, Karen's employer, a mid-sized financial firm with strict policies on ethics and discrimination, had terminated her. Management acted swiftly once they caught wind of the scandal, conducting a brief review before sending her a curt email. Effective immediately, your employment has been terminated due to conduct violating company values. No severance, no second chances, just gone. Word spread like wildfire. Many of her co-workers, who were Black or part of other minority groups, had already seen the viral footage. The break room buzz quickly turned into open discussions. Some admitted they'd suspected her biases all along, but now they finally had undeniable proof. Losing her job, however, was only the beginning. Next came the Homeowners Association, HOA, where Karen had proudly served as a board member, ever eager to enforce rules against what she deemed undesirable elements in the community. But now, those same neighbors who once sided with her clamored for her removal. At the next HOA meeting, voices rose in condemnation. We can't have someone like Karen making decisions for us. She lied to the police and endangered an innocent man's life. That's not who we are. How many others has she harassed without consequence? The vote was unanimous. Karen was stripped of her position. The backlash continued to snowball. Her family distanced themselves, unwilling to be associated with a woman whose face had become synonymous with prejudice and deceit. Friends stopped answering her calls. Some blocked her entirely. At the grocery store, strangers avoided her gaze, while others stared or muttered under their breath. A few even confronted her directly. Calling the cops on an innocent man? You should be ashamed of yourself. Guess you're not so perfect after all, Karen. She stopped going outside unless absolutely necessary. Deleting her social media accounts did little to undo the damage. Karen had transformed from the self-righteous enforcer of the neighborhood to a pariah, shunned by the very people she once lorded over. And yet, the cruelest truth was that she had done it to herself. One cold afternoon, Karen sat alone in her house, staring out the window. For the first time in weeks, she saw Darius outside, shoveling snow again. Her stomach twisted. There was no escaping what she had done. Her reputation lay in ruins, and she had lost everything. Calling the police had been meant to make her feel powerful, invincible even. Instead, it exposed her for who she truly was. For days, she wrestled with whether to say something, to apologize, to explain, to somehow salvage what remained of her humanity. Finally, she mustered the courage. Pulling on her coat, she stepped outside. As she approached, Darius paused, leaning on his shovel, his expression unreadable. Karen hesitated, overwhelmed by a shame so profound it felt suffocating. She began, swallowing hard. I just wanted to say. Darius interrupted her with a voice that was calm, yet resolute. Save it, he said, as she blinked, startled and unprepared. You called the police on me simply because you saw a Black man doing nothing wrong. He paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. You wanted them to see me as a criminal, but look how that turned out. Karen's gaze fell to the ground, unable to meet his eyes. Darius took a step closer, his tone steady and unshakable. Next time, think before you act. Karen opened her mouth to respond, but no words came. The truth had already risen between them, loud and undeniable. Without another word, Darius turned and walked back toward his house, leaving Karen alone in the cold embrace of the snow. She had tried to control the story, to bend it to her will, but now she stood exposed, her actions speaking for themselves. In that moment, she became not the author of her narrative, but a cautionary tale etched into the silence of the winter air.